not have been more deeply moved. Tesla had just invented the principle that would power the modern world. Of course, having the idea was one thing, actually building it, a completely different story. Tesla was still a broke engineering student, kind of between jobs with weird habits and a brain with crazy ideas that most people just kind of wrote off. He needed money, tools, and maybe most of all, he needed a support group. He needed people, or even just one person who would actually believe in him. And that someone turned out to be the most famous inventor in America, someone who would become both Tesla's boss and his biggest rival. But before that could happen, Tesla had to find a way to cross the Atlantic with almost no money and somehow convince one of the most powerful men in the world to take a chance on him. And that man is Thomas Edison. So June 1884, Nikola Tesla arrives in the United States. On his way to the boat, he loses everything: his train ticket, his luggage, his personal belongings. By the time he lands in New York, all he had was 4 cents in his pocket. But to Tesla, America's the land of opportunity. It's time to get going. He had been working for Edison's European company in Paris, and his boss there had given him a letter of introduction to the great Thomas Edison himself. So Tesla makes his way to Edison's headquarters at 65 Fifth Avenue and somehow talks his way into meeting with the most famous inventor in America. He'd invented the light bulb, the phonograph. He was working on early motion pictures. If something was cutting edge and exciting back then, chances are Edison's name was already attached to it. He was also just like insanely wealthy. He was running this massive operation with hundreds of workers and, different facilities around the world, investors lining up to throw money at whatever he could do next. So when this weird, skinny European kid shows up claiming that he can improve Edison's electrical systems, you'd think Edison would just laugh him out of the room. But here's the thing about Edison. He was obsessed with finding talented people. He'd give anyone a chance if they could prove that they had real engineering abilities. Plus, Tesla came with a great recommendation from Paris. So Edison gives Tesla a job on the spot. But man, these two could not have been more different. I mean, Edison was hands-on, trial and error, make stuff, break stuff, move fast, like let's get after it. While Tesla's brain worked completely backwards from that. Remember, this is the guy who could build entire machines in his brain and then run them for weeks before ever touching a piece of metal. So Tesla would sit in the corner and stare off into space for a while. Then suddenly he'd announce that he'd solved whatever problem they were working on. He described exactly what needed to be built, down to the tiniest details, because he'd already tested it mentally in his head thousands of times. Edison thought the whole thing was magic or like a hoax, or he was just being lazy. He had no clue how Tesla's brain worked. How do you even trust someone who says that they can invent things without building a prototype? Like, it made no sense at all. Edison was used to being the smartest guy in the room, and now here's this foreigner who seems to grasp electrical engineering on a different level. But Tesla's methods worked. Edison had been struggling with inefficiencies in his direct current generators, and they were losing a lot of power and breaking down all the time. Tesla took one look at the system, disappeared into his mental workshop for a few days, and then he comes back with a complete redesign that solved most of the problems. Edison was impressed, but also a little worried. This new guy was making improvements that Edison's entire team of engineers hadn't been able to figure out. And here's where the story gets really interesting. And it really just shows you the kind of person that Edison was. He pulls Tesla aside and he makes him an offer, $50,000 if he can make the direct current more efficient. $50,000 in 1884 is it's life-changing money. To put it in perspective, that's $1.5 million. For Tesla, who was literally counting pennies, he showed up to America with 4 pennies in his pocket. This is life-changing. So Tesla throws himself into the project with that obsessive intensity that he's known for, and he worked 18-hour days for months, completely redesigning Edison's generator. Everything from the systems to the machinery to the materials, everything from the ground up. And he improves the efficiency. He reduces the mechanical problems and basically created a whole new generation of direct current machines. It was brilliant, truly, and it would have taken Edison's team years to accomplish. And so when Tesla finishes and presents his improvements, Edison is amazed. He's blown away. The new designs work exactly as Tesla had promised. They were more reliable, more efficient, and solved problems that have been driving Edison crazy for years. So Tesla walked into Edison's office. He asked for his $50,000, but Edison looked at him and said this: "Tesla, you don't understand our American humor." Let that sink in. Just think about how you would feel. Tesla had just spent months revolutionizing Edison's entire electrical system, probably the most important work of his career to that point. And Edison's response was, come on, dude, we're just goofing around. You really thought I was going to pay you $50,000? Nah, thanks for the schematics, but nah, we're not going to do that. Tesla is pissed. And honestly, I mean, I don't blame him at all. I mean, I would be livid. This wasn't just about money as much as it was about respect, right? Like Tesla's a pretty minimalist guy, but just the fact that he would be promised something, do the work, and then someone would go back on their word. Edison basically just lies to him, uses his genius to solve major engineering problems, and then laughs it off as a joke. Tesla quits on the spot. Now he has a problem. He's unemployed in a foreign country with no money, no connections, and the job market for brilliant but weird electrical engineers wasn't exactly booming in '84. So Tesla spent the next year doing literally whatever work he could. And at that point, it literally meant he was digging ditches and trenches for the New York City Works Department. I mean, it's insane. Like, just put that in your head. One of the greatest minds in human history. He just revolutionizes electrical engineering, spending days with a shovel in his hand, digging holes in the street for $2 a day. He later called it one of the most humiliating times in his life, but he had brilliant ideas in his head, but he was just doing hard labor to survive. But sometimes rock bottom is exactly where you need to be to find the right opportunity. So by 1886, Tesla met Alfred S. Brown, who was a superintendent at Western Union, and Charles F. Peck, a successful patent attorney. These guys had heard rumors about Tesla's work with Edison and were curious about his ideas for improving electrical systems. Tesla explained his vision for the alternating current motors, the same breakthrough that he had in that park in Budapest, and he was still obsessed with it. Brown and Peck were smart enough to recognize genius when they saw it, so they gave Tesla the financial backing that he needed to start his own company, the Tesla Electric and Light Manufacturing Company. Finally, Tesla had his own laboratory, his own equipment, and the freedom to work on his alternating current motor without someone looking over his shoulder. Tesla went absolutely nuts with productivity. In 1887 and '88, he filed more than 30 patents, not just minor improvements or tweaking existing tech. These were major breakthroughs in electrical engineering that no one had ever seen before. He developed polyphase AC motors, new types of generators, improved lighting systems, and basically laid the groundwork for the entire modern electrical grid. But again, the centerpiece of all this work was the AC induction motor. This was the machine Tesla had been visualizing in his mind for years. Tesla's motor used rotating magnetic fields to turn the rotor, which meant no brushes, no sparks, and way more efficiency than anything that Edison was building. So, May 16th, 1888, Tesla was invited to present his work at the American Institute of Electrical Engineers in New York, and this is a massive deal. All the major electrical engineers and industry leaders are going to be there. Tesla stood up in front of his room full of experts and basically announced that he'd solved one of the fundamental problems of electrical engineering. His presentation was called, quote, "A new system of alternate current motors and transformers," and it absolutely blows everyone's mind. Tesla didn't just describe his motor, he demonstrated it. He had working prototypes that could power machinery more efficiently than anyone had ever seen before. The engineering community is just completely stunned. Here was this unknown inventor who had kind of worked at some different companies who basically redesigned how electrical power could work. But one person in the audience was paying particularly close attention, and that is a man by the name of George Westinghouse. Westinghouse was Edison's biggest competitor in the electrical business. He was already working with AC power for lighting systems, but he'd been struggling with the same motor problem that had obsessed Tesla. Westinghouse knew that whoever could build a practical AC motor could control the future of electrical power. After Tesla's presentation, Westinghouse didn't waste any time. He walked straight up to Tesla with an offer that would change both their lives. Westinghouse wanted to buy Tesla's patent and hire him as a consultant. But this wasn't going to be like the Edison situation. Westinghouse was offering real money, a lot of real money. He was going to pay Tesla $60,000 upfront for his patent, plus a $2,500 annual consulting fee, plus royalties of $2.50 for every horsepower of Tesla motors that Westinghouse sold. In today's money, the initial payment alone would be $2 million. Tesla finally had someone who understood the revolutionary potential of his AC system. Westinghouse wasn't just buying patents, he was betting his entire company on Tesla's vision of how electrical power should work. Edison, meanwhile, was probably starting to realize that he'd made a massive mistake. This strange foreign kid he'd cheated out of $50,000 had just signed a deal with his biggest rival that could potentially destroy Edison's entire electrical empire. The war of currents was about to begin, and it would be unlike anything the business world had seen before. Two brilliant inventors, two completely different approaches to electrical power, and millions of dollars on the line. Edison had the reputation and the established consumer base, but Tesla and Westinghouse had something more powerful. They just had better technology. Tesla went from a broke immigrant to multimillionaire literally in the span of a few years. But here is what's fascinating about Tesla's personality. He didn't care about the money. What excited him was that finally someone understood his vision and was willing to bet everything on it. Meanwhile, Edison is pissed. He'd spent years calling alternating currents dangerous and useless, and now his biggest rival had hired the guy who actually made it work. Suddenly, this wasn't just a debate over technology, it was personal. If AC was really better than DC, Edison's whole electrical empire was at risk. So Edison fought back, and he didn't fight back in a gentlemanly way. He fights back dirty. What came next was called the War of Currents, and it was one of the wildest business rivalries in all of American history.